How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the weekly trading review for the week of July 28. So this week I had a total of 3 swing trades and 7 day trades, total profits of $230.91. For my swings, I had 2 wins, 0 losses, and 1 scratch. For my day, I had 1 win, 2 losses, and 4 scratches. So let's start with the market first. I'm going to get into the swing trades and then into the day trades. So market-wise, really big week of news. You can see we opened up here on the 28th at 637. Market is now down at 621. So we had, first of all, just zooming in over here, obviously this big rally through the new all-time high. We had a death cross earlier, then we're now back up to the golden cross. And now the 100 SMA is actually catching up to the 200, so we're starting to get that clean stack. So technically, the market is bullish. Obviously, look, there are fundamental concerns, but right now I'm just going to focus on the technical side of things. So technically, the market's bullish, and I'm going to expand this just a tad so it's a little easier to see. Okay. And I'm just going to hide these drawings. It's the wrong one. There we go. Okay. So, market here, after a nice run up, you see it stalled over here, and then it made another nice little push up into earnings, right? So, before earnings, there's usually a bid to the market, as you saw. Here's in July, and as we ramp up to mega cap tech earnings at the end of the month, we got that little bid, and then that pause. So, coming into this week, market was compressing near the all-time high, and we knew that there was a big week of earnings coming up, econ news as well, and we wanted to gauge the reaction from the sidelines. So I didn't have a ton of exposure coming into this week. I had, I think, 1 open long on MS, and just taking some day trades, maybe some overnights, because I really wanted to get aggressive on swing trades on a market dip, right? That's what I was really watching for. So that's why I was kind of a little more cautious here. And you can see in this, compared to the nature of this rally, this move up here, there's a little bit more choppiness here. There's some a little more red candles coming in, but the market is held above the 8 EMA. So we get some mega cap tech earnings out. I believe Meta comes through. Meta is a positive move, so I'm going to pull it up on the chart here. Here's Meta. So positive move over. It comes back in with the market. Microsoft, big positive mover, and now that gap has started to fill as well. Amazon was a miss to the downside. So big bearish move now through the 50 SMA. And then the last one over here was Apple. Apple also gapped up, and then a bearish reaction closing below let me also hide this a little bit easier to see. Through both the 50 and the 100 SMA, as well as the AVWAP-E. I guess that this is going to re-anchor from last time. So Apple is looking pretty nice here as a short. So basically, generally the reaction was, I guess we had 2 bearish reactions and then 2 bullish reactions, but the bullish reactions started to give back some of those gains, and then we got the selling off later in the week. The interesting thing as well was actually just some of the differences in the sector strength. So if I pull up the RSP chart, you can see that RSP had started to sell off in the beginning of the week. It was selling off the whole week all the way down to the 50. I believe similar to IWM. Yeah, that was a little bit stronger, but you can see it was starting to give away those gains before SPY. If you look at QQQ and some of the tech stocks EDF, right? QQQ was pretty much propping up the market, these tech stocks. If I look at like XLK, zooming into that tech sector, right, holding up really well. If I look at SMH, oops, that is not SMH. If you look at SMH here, right, we got a little bit of a double top, but there was some nice strength. This semis were actually rallying while the market was flat that week. And then if we zoom in on MAGS, right, MAGS was holding up pretty well until we got these earnings, and then we started to see that sell-off pulling that market down. So the thing that I saw was that there was a pretty big divergence in the week with tech stocks and non-tech stocks. And even I think on one of these days, if I'll try to remember, Oh yeah, I believe it was this day on the 31st. We had a big gap up in the market, and then this was mostly QQQ related. And I think if I um pull up these charts here, and I'm just gonna pull up IWM for example, right? So here is market on the 31st, gap up. IWM, right, actually gap down. Same thing with RSP. So they were already weak, right? Here's RSP on the 31st. And then as soon as QQQ decided to roll over, that's when we got some big selling pressure. So the important thing that I saw with the divergences is that if only tech is holding up the market and everything else is bearish, as soon as tech starts to lose its luster, that buying and that bid starts to dry up, then the market's going to start to roll over because, there's no other sector holding up the market. So again, just keep an eye on these as they go on. They can give some clues throughout the day as to which side you want to be a little bit more cautious about. Again, gap up to all-time highs, like you want to be cautious over here as well. Also hitting close to that 640 level. So we got some tails over here. We start to roll over. So definitely some shorting opportunities in here throughout the day. Okay, so market this week. Zoom out to the M15. So you started on a flat open on the 28th, pulling back here, kind of a weak bearish trend day, gapped up to all-time high, fill in and go through the gap, and then we start to stall and compress. Small gap up, kind of stall and compress. FOMC day, by the way, bearish reaction to the downside, and then we flip up to the upside. Big gap up over here to an all-time high, and I think here is that double top that we're kind of seeing. And the clue also, by the way, was that after this market rally, right, we're starting to compress, so that's when you want to be a little bit more cautious with how many longs you're taking on right now, and just not overloading at the wrong time. So we got this bearish trend day, but it was choppy, right? We had some ranges up over here. It wasn't like he's steady selling the whole day, so there were some nice entry points to get short here, in my opinion. And then on the first, we had a big gap and go day. You can see that the move was exhausted pretty much in, the first 30 minutes or so. 45 minutes, we got a bounce up. We tested for another marginal new low, and then we pretty much just chopped around the whole day digesting the gains. And you can interpret this in a couple of ways. So we're on the AVWAP Q right now, so we're holding this level right now, but this is a pretty decent selling pressure, and we weren't actually able to rally off that level. So the one thing I'm thinking of here is, okay, well, is this probably the leg up higher, and then we're going to start to inch lower? Or, right, is this actually the end of this bearish move, and we're going to move up higher? So it's kind of harder to tell, but what I'm really leaning on is two things: this recent strength on the bear side, and also the fact that we weren't really able to rally too much, and we're just sort of absorbing the selling pressure, not really able to challenge the high. So I'm leaning on these lower highs over here. And as long as we make those lower highs and we keep testing this range, then there's a good chance that 620 is going to break. And then at that point, next level I really see is probably the 50 SMA at 611. And then that also lines up pretty well with this prior all-time high, which is coming around 610, 613. So there's going to be, it kind of lines up really well with this level over here that we're likely to test. So that's kind of one thing that I'm going to put this on over here, and I'm delete some of these lines because they're not as relevant. Yep. So that's kind of the main line that I'm watching here. Just, okay, prior all-time high, probably decent point to test. And yeah, we're like, it kind of matches up at this level here. I drew this upward sloping algo line, if you want, over well. There's like a kind of a more shallow one coming into play that lines up with AVWAP-Q. So I ended up taking it out because it didn't provide as much information to me, in my opinion. So I'm actually going to take that out as well. All right, well, yeah, I'll have to take that out later. Anyways, so that was the market this week. We kind of had some flat days. We had some bullish opportunities, but definitely some heavy selling to end the week. Now, I'm going to go over my swings. First swing that I took last week, but I closed this week, was MS. and definitely glad I closed that one. But so MS over here, I took it on 724. So Isidore would call that out in the one option chat. I like the setup. It broke it through this high minus trend line coming up over here. It didn't quite close above it, but it did kind of break over here. So I took it on the 24th, and I took the the August 8th, 138 calls for $5.60. So took it over here. Stock was kind of compressing, and it was also making some, lower highs over here intraday, but it was holding that 50-day SMA. So my original passive target was like maybe 144. More aggressive target was like 145-ish, that recent high. And I was leaning on this 8 EMA, this AVWAP-Q, and there's also this, we had this low here all the way from the earnings, but kind of some support here around this like you can see this 141 level. There's some support, even 138, 139.50. There's some support over here. So leaning on those levels. So had a couple of days, but SPY was flat, market was flat. So when I got this pop up early on the 29th, I exited at $6 pretty early at 9:40 a.m. Now, I did sell some short calls against it on Friday. So I sold the August 1st 146 short calls for 38 cents. So I did actually close that for a 12-cent profit. So overall, I took $40 on the original calls, $5.60 to $6, and then I closed the short calls. I got in for a 38-cent credit, sold it for a 26-cent debit, so that's $12. So overall, $52 a profit. Nice little win in the short calls. Even though the stock went up, I just had the time premium decay on my side. And I took it because we had a SPY gap up on the 29th. So if I look at on the 29th on the M5 chart, yep, so we got this gap up to a new all-time high. So gap up to all-time high. Took gains in the first part of the open because I was like, all right, this stock hasn't really rallied in the last couple of days or so. There's some selling pressure. So I'm going to take some gains to the all-time high and, kind of gut out to the sidelines over here. So that was a nice little win in MS. And it was interesting because, I've been trying to push some of my trades. But in this case, right, if I held this 3 days longer, I would have been in some deep trouble. Now, I did have another push higher the next day. So it's like, yeah, maybe you could have held it, but this price action is not, it's really hard to lean on. See how it's so kind of choppy and wicky over here? Lots of tails, not a ton of volume, just not a very strong move up higher. So you don't know if we're going to actually, right, you don't know if this is going to double top here or if it's going to make that final push higher and actually test that level. So that was MS. Next swing that I took that ended up being a day trade was AMD. So I took it on the 28th. I took the August 1st 170 calls for $5.25. Yep. So this was the D1 chart, obviously for AMD is really great. And I really liked this setup on the chart. You can see how the stock made a massive move higher on the 28th, right? And then it was just kind of chopping around VWAP and see like higher lows, right? And just slowly pushing up, and it was just soaking in all that profit taking. And on the 28th as well, the market was selling off that day. So markets coming down here. We have a strong move, and we're preserving the vast majority of this move near VWAP. So I took it over here at the 320 candle. I got in at 525, and my plan was to hold this overnight, which actually would have been a really nice profit. But I got a nice move over here in my favor towards the end of the day, and so I just took some nice gains at 575 at the end of the day when it closed, because I was like, I have a nice little amount of gains, so maybe I'll take it. But the real reason I took gains is like I didn't have enough conviction in my overnight. I was like looking at a lot of charts, so I had enough conviction to take the trade. You can see we had a nice run up over here. Probably take some gains around the $180 level. You can see there's some wicks here. the strong move. But even on the gap up, like I was really just targeting a move back to the high, but you can see that we had a really nice chance to break it. And even earlier in the day when the market's starting to sell off, right, this stock is powering higher. And then when the market starts to move in that gap here about an hour or so into the day, right, it's starting to bring down the stock. Here we have a really high volume bearish hammer, so there's another exit point. So you're exiting somewhere here in the move around 180. A nice place to take gains. But yeah, I mean, that would have been a doubler overnight. So missed it, but hey, you know, that happens. All right. So that was that. Next stock that I took as a swing trade, but also closed a little bit early, was Airbnb. So I took this post FOMC statement when we got some stacked red candles on really heavy volume over here, breaking through this low. So some nice long red candles. And if we go to the Airbnb chart, I took this short right here because, first of all, this stock actually had a really nice sell-off from this double top through here, and it was breaking through the 50-day SMA. So I was getting a nice price that was close to support, and it had room to the AVUAP E as well as the 200-day SMA. So I was leading on that. The second thing is actually, while the market was kind of rallying a little bit throughout the day, Airbnb had gapped down, and it had actually held the 50-day SMA. So it was gapped down and it was holding this level until, oops, that's the wrong chart, right here. So we had this big move here, right, and then unable to bounce, and then we started to crack through the 50 throughout that FOMC statement. So it wasn't able to rally over here, and then it started to crack down. So I took it at 134, which was not the most ideal entry, I would say. It may have a better chance getting in at that 8 EMA pullback, but I took it right kind of over here. I took a swing short 134.50 shares at 305. So yeah, right, 305. I took it right here, and I got in somewhere here. And my thought was, all right, well, this is a strong move. It's probably going to end near the low of the day. And so there's a decent chance that this stock can actually push through AVWAP to AVWAP-Q by the end of the day. Or, I'll hold it overnight. It's probably going to get there overnight. So market actually had a decent rally to close the day into mega cap tech earnings. And Airbnb it did pretty well. It held below the 50-day SMA. I did add to the trade at 315 when I saw this candle kind of start to get rejected from the 8 EMA. I added 25 shares at 1308, so my average price was now 1303. And again, aside this where it's like I can take a big $6 hit against me if it goes overnight, and it's probably going to test its 50 SMA, but I'm fine with holding it. So overnight, market was up from the mega cap tech earnings, and Airbnb was down. Right, it was kind of flat. So I was like, all right, well, I got the market totally wrong here, but Airbnb is still down. So I put an order out after hours at 134.02, and then I took a 1 cent gain at 4:10 p.m. So I feel like I managed to get out of that stock, even though we got the market wrong. But you can see the next day, market didn't get up with the market, and it came back down and actually pushed through that low of the day over here. So had a chance to get out at that AVWAP-Q as the market started to sell off. But yeah, took the 1 cent gain out of the trade because got the market wrong. So potential improvements is like, yeah, I guess I could have held it, but it was like, was I preparing for a massive selling pressure? Maybe if it manifested later. But the market was still bullish up to this point, right? So, on these shorts, I'm like, well, if it's still bullish, right, and we'd hold the gains, right, this stock would have to maybe go against me too much. So I'm fine kind of not being as sticky with shorts until I see some decent selling pressure like we've seen here. And I'll get into the open swings later, but then I can be a little more sticky with them. But yeah, that ended up continuing and obviously tested that 200-day SMA. So it would have been a nice winner later. But yeah, if I'm holding these shorts longer, it's me actually perfectly timing the market. And then again, I'll have to also get out of my longs earlier, right? So I'm just kind of being more nimble the whole week. Okay, NVIDIA. So it took this one, end of day on the 30th. So really strong stock. Held up super well post FOMC. Again, nice grinder on the D1, just hugging that 8 EMA. So this stock, right, market is selling off really hard, making you low of the day. Nvidia is holding up really well. Held VWAP, started to climb back up higher. So I got filled right at VWAP at 178.60. I was long 55 shares. And then I actually meant to go long 65 shares. So I managed to get another 10 shares at 178.88. So average closing price for the day is 178.64. Nice pop up after hours from the mega cap tech earnings. So I took gains in the stock first early pre-market. I exited 30 shares at 182.64, which was a $4 profit per share. And then I exited the remaining 35 shares at 183, which I got filled right at the open, hit 183 over here. Because market, big gap up to an all-time high. NVIDIA gap up to an all-time high. They're probably both going to fill in the gap. NVIDIA is a choppy stock, so we're going to pull back to this 8 EMA. So in these big gaps up, take gains, and you don't really look back. So that was a really nice win. That was one of my bigger wins for the year. I think top 5 bigger wins. So was pretty happy with that. And it was just a really nice setup, right? Just nice steady grinder throughout the whole day, holding up really well, good volume, and worked out pretty well. So nice win on that guy. And then on last trade that I took, I can see a lot of the themes with these swing trades is like I'm keeping it pretty short term. So there's just some overnight swings in here. I took VST as an overnight long on the 31st. So you can see how the market was selling off very hard on the 31st. And then VST, what did that stock do? First, strong D1 chart. Strong D1 chart, and it was holding its low of the day, making higher lows, and just kind of, it wasn't able to get above VWAP, but it was just right at that VWAP over here. So really liked it. And I went long overnight, 30 shares at 208.90. So market gap down on those mega cap tech earnings. VST had gap down, testing its 8 EMA and 15 EMA early in the morning. Market selling off. VST actually holding up pretty well here. And then we start to poke into the gap at 10.10. Right, when the market starts to gain a little bit of support, you can see how this stock actually found support before the market. 9:55. Market found support at 10 o'clock, right? So it's starting to rally before the market, which is a good sign. And then it fills in the gap. So in this scenario overnight, my original game plan was, okay, gaps up, I'll take some profits near the high, right? This is a deeper retracement, but I feel I have a good chance to maybe get out at like, 111.50 or maybe $12, so maybe like a $2.50 gain, $3 gain, something like that. Now, big gap down, so stock held up really well, but I got the market wrong, and gap and go bearish trend day, I figured, all right, if it's going to fizzle out, and once it fizzles out, this stock should be able to rally. So once the move fizzled out, right, this stock was able to rally, and I just had an alert said, all right, I mean, again, I'm going to take a 1 cent scratch on this because hey, like maybe it fills in the gap here, but there's some decent selling pressure. I don't know how much I really want to push this. So decent selling pressure here, and then we got a dip, and then we got this move up over here, I believe, at 11.51 is when I managed to scratch out of my trade. So I entered obviously yesterday at 208.90, got out at 208.91. And it was nice, and it's always mentally it's always tricky because obviously when the move goes down against you, my first thought is, oh man, well hopefully I can get out for a better loss. And then once it starts to go in my favor, I'm like, well, maybe I should stick with the position so you can get kind of greedy. Right, in this case, look, we did have a decent move higher over here, but then we got this retracement back down. Right, and I would have to get out somewhere over here if it started to go against me. So yeah, I mean, two things. What is nice is I didn't chase, so I have a good chance of getting out for a win or a scratch because of my entry. And two, I had a great D1 chart to lean on, so I can, again, get out for a scratch. So a lot of these moves where it's like the stock is holding up well, but we're getting some pretty volatile market moves, so that can really swing these things against the favor. And I didn't want to be, again, caught just trapped in a long or something over the weekend if we had a nice bearish close. And it wasn't a super bearish close. It was kind of a neutral close, I'd say, just right around VWAP compressing. But we weren't able to really bounce off this level. We're just sort of holding this level. So I do think we see maybe another leg lower here. So that was VSD. And then one stock I am short over the weekend is Snow. I got in at a half size, 20 shares at 205.04 at near the end of the day. So I really like this setup on Snow. We got this double top breaking through some support, really heavy volume, and I feel like I'm close to this SMA that I can lean on. A lot of stocks that I saw, like even I don't know, if I pull up like Lulu, for example. Lulu's been a great short for a while, but you can see how the stock is kind of getting overextended here. Even something like I know ACN, like ACN's a nice short, right? You can see how this stock's also getting kind of overextended. So there's a lot of nice strong stocks that I feel like are overextended from their 8 EMAs. And like, yeah, they can make another move lower, but again, my whole goal with the swings is to try not to chase some of these moves and be willing to let them go. And with these really relatively weak stocks, right, they're dropping before the market starts to drop. So when we really get that market selling pressure, then they're really going to start to drop. Now, Snow is different because it's kind of a bearish reversal setup, was what I see, where, okay, look, we made a double top, and we're starting to get through these lows here, massive red candle and heavy volume. There's probably going to have some follow through, and I think I've some nice range here, probably at least to the gap of this low, 191, 192, you can call it. I have some room to that gap. That lines up pretty well with this prior high. If we get through that gap, then you have this 100 SMA coming up over here. This gap fill close at 179. So there's a couple of major points I can take some gains on. Maybe there's like this kind of low minus trend line coming in like here. You can see this kind of higher volume candle coming in over here, or maybe that could be the low minus trend line. So obviously that could be a bit of a factor at 200. But I'm not super worried about that channel for the time being. I think we have a good chance of, cracking through that, and I think at least testing the gap. So I'm short 20 shares on kind of a couple notions. So one, Snow can be a little choppy, so it might take some time to digest the gains. It could maybe test that 50 SMA. It could maybe test a VWAP Q. So watching for that, and I'm willing to get a little bit more heat on that retest. And that way, if that retest fails and we're seeing some relative weakness, I can actually add to the trade for a full size and take some nice profits in the next leg down. So this is giving me a chance to kind of evaluate the price action. Second part over here is I am bearish on the market, but I'm not super confident on my bearish thesis, right? Because I was like, all right, well, there's a nice heavy selling pressure, and I want to respect it. We're getting to August, which is a seasonally weak month, but this is a pretty nice bullish trend on the market. So there's a chance that buyers make another push higher. Maybe they fail, and if they fail and we start to roll over, right, then we can get another leg lower. So, I think what it seems to me is we have a nice heavy volume bearish hammer. We have some follow through selling on high volume. So I'm more likely to favor there's some more downside here. I wouldn't be surprised if we test the 50. And I think Snow will continue to tank and at least probably test that gap. So all I'm doing is giving myself the optionality to add to the trade if the market has a bit of a weak bounce. If the stock has a bit of a weak bounce, I can evaluate the price action, and if it doesn't go in my favor, I can get out of the trade. Does this also have earnings on the 20th? So yeah, I got some time. I got about like a good 2.5 weeks before earnings, and I do also have to check if I go show to scanners on Snow. I got to make sure that one thing you can do that's pretty helpful is you can see if stocks are on pre-earnings bull or bear. So I'm just going to make some good option liquidity here. And I'm going to go to pre-earnings bear in 3 weeks. Let's just see what comes up on the scan. In 2 weeks. There we go. Okay, so that filter was too high. Okay, what about pre-earnings bull? Okay, so there's nothing there. Let me check pre-earnings bull in 3 weeks. Okay, so Snow is a pre-earnings bull. Okay, so now I know that's in my favor. Well, it's actually not against my favor. So I know that this stock is probably going to rally into earnings unless something is horribly wrong. So in this case, right, sold off into earnings. That case, it rallied. Right, this time it rallied. This time it rallied. This time it rallied. This time it rallied. So unless the market selling pressure is pretty strong, there may be a bid here, right? So February 2023, yeah, there was some selling pressure here. So we'll have to wait and see what the market does. But if the market is not super bearish, it's probably going to rally into earnings. If the market does have some nice bearish headwind in our favor, then this stock could sell off into earnings. All right. So let me look at the day trades that I took. First one is RCL, and I took this stock. Let me just quickly go to my intraday trades. Okay, RCL. So I took this stock on the 29th, post-earnings bull, and this was a gap reversal trade. Okay, so went long on RCL. So it sort of broke through this high of the day. Here is the prior day AVWAP coming into play around 338. So broke through the high of the day, and I got in on a pullback, small pullback at 336. I kind of chased it a little bit, but I really should have bid on the halfway of this candle at 334, which I did not. So SPY had a weak bearish trend day, and RCL had a bullish gap reversal with heavy volume. So because the bearish trend day was weak, I could actually lean into the stock because I knew as long as the selling pressure doesn't accelerate, then I'm good. If the selling pressure does start to accelerate, then yeah, it's not super great. So it's looking really weak here, and then it actually started to pick up some steam here, around it filled in the gap right over here at 1150. And I got in the trade kind of around 11 o'clock. So I was like, filled in the gap. It's not really doing a whole lot here. This move has been pretty weak. So I feel like there's a chance we kind of hold the gap and kind of maintain the pressure. Now, selling accelerated, bullish hammer here, and we kind of just stalled out for the rest of the day. So it actually withstood that heavy selling pressure quite well. And then it actually pushed up higher to a new high of the day and actually broke through that prior day AVWAP before stalling and coming back down. I need to quite check if it hit that 8 EMA. Yeah, I got close to the 8 EMA. Looks like it may have hit. I mean, I don't know if there's any high volume candles here. Maybe hit a little bit of support, but usually what I do on these gap fills, I'll target the prior day AVWAP. So I think it was a good setup, actually. I just didn't trust it super well. Two mistakes that I made on the setup. So I should probably talk about when I exited. So I got in over here, and then when the market selling pressure accelerated, I got out at 334, and I got out at the 1130 candle. So I got out right over here, 334. Got at 336, got out at 334, right over here. When I was like, all right, well, what's the 1120 candle here? Yeah, SPY's kind of accelerating down. Okay, this selling pressure starting to pick up. Market did not do what I expected it to do. Stock is holding up well, but my thinking was, okay, if the market continues to be bearish for the whole day, that's going to put a lid on the stock price action. I don't know how much farther it's going to fall down. Market ended up bottoming out here. RCL held up pretty firm and then moved up higher. So two mistakes that I made. One is I didn't do my better bid. I should have got in at broke at candle. Halfway point of this candle is a fine place to enter, 334. Second thing is that I could have scratched out of the trade. But two, this move here, wait for at least another kind of bounce here, see what the market tries to do on this bounce. So I got a pretty decent entry in terms of timing this cycle, right? Like if I look at the entry, there was another part of the cycle, so I didn't quite time it super well. But when the market started to find support, and so did the stock, then it actually started to rally up over here, kind of starting from 12:15ish. When we got some buying over here, and we managed to push up higher. So I think 334, and then hold to my price target at 338 would have been a $4 winner. Okay, next day trade that I took same day was Spot. I took a short on Spot. So definitely a bit of a crazy start here. But stock post-earnings bear, broken through that 100-day SMA, and actually looking pretty juicy for a short, I would say. So I'm going to put an alert and bracket that. You can see there's definitely some action going on intraday. Very choppy action battling around that 100-day SMA. So with spot, I was like, all right, well, look, I got the market wrong. Let me find a stock that is grinding pretty well over here. So spot, big post earnings move lower, and I liked how it was grinding lower, kind of the whole day. And then when the market bounced up over here, you can see how this stock actually was starting. It bounced up over here, and then it immediately flattened down to a new low of the day. So I liked what I saw in spot, and I got filled on a pullback at 619.50. So just a pullback to the 8 EMA over here at 1230, while the market was kind of starting to sink lower over here. So we got this push down. We got to push higher over here after that. So this stock started to rally and actually pull back all the way to VWAP. And I was watching to see what it did at VWAP, and then eventually started to roll over later in the day, and I managed to get out of the trade at 620.50. I took 10 shares, so it was only a $10 loss in the stock. I did actually have a chance to scratch out for a 1 cent gain, so missed my Pete scratch out, which I've been working on. But yeah, so I got it over here, and then I scratched out over here later in the day as it confirmed. Because the selling pressure persisted, and then we got a breakthrough later in the day. And I knew that in power hour, it's more likely the sellers are going to come through and try to push this a little bit lower. So overall, I mean, I think it was a okay pick. The only thing is this price action wasn't super strong in my opinion. And it was a little bit chasey. Like even both this and RCL were a little bit chasey. Even though I did get a better bid versus chasing at the low of the day at 6.15, so that all automatically saved me $4 immediately on the stock, and I would not have had a chance to scratch out of the trade. So at least getting it over here was a little bit better. I was able to scratch out, but yeah, it wasn't the strongest price action, and I think there were some better entry points on this chart. You can see how choppy it was, so the chance of this actually reversing back up are high. And again, I made a big gap. This gap and grinders are a little more dangerous because you're just getting in at the end of the move. You got to withstand a bit of a pullback there. So I think the better entry was probably a 310, which is a late day trade, which I don't normally take. I was considering adding to the position here, close at 627, but because it was later in the day and adding is technically making another entry, I decided to not do it. It also would be averaging down in the position. It would have worked out this time, but yeah, I just didn't quite have the confidence, and it kind of felt like it was against my rules there. All right. Day trade number 3 here, CWH. So, again, another post-earn day trade. Massive volume over here through this day trade. Yep, so I took this guy on the rejection. So I went short CWH at 12.35. So let me find that candle. Yeah, I went short like over, yeah, kind of over here at 15.45. So what I liked was this stock, strong move lower, pull back to VWAP, and was just chopping around VWAP over here. So some nice strength in that stock, or some nice weakness in that stock, I should say, on the 30th. If I look at what SPY was doing on the 30th, this stock, right, super weak, bullish trend day, pre-FOMC, so wasn't looking to get anything crazy. I was like, all right, if I can take a quick scalp, like 15, 20 cents, I'll be happy with that. When it started to break through this trend line and start to curve over, I was trying to get a bid at 15.50, but I couldn't quite get it, so missed that over there. SPY now was getting, where was 12.35? Was, yep, over here. So it was hitting the high of the day. It was stalling. So I was like, all right, well, it's stalling at the high of the day. It's probably going to be dead until Fed. We got this bearish cross. We're probably going to test VWAP, and maybe we'll test the low of the day, but I think it's going to be a range-bound day until VWAP, until the FOMC statement. So I get in short over here. And then stock is kind of inching lower, but not really doing too much over here. So end up taking some gains at 15.40 at, let me see here, at 1 o'clock. So an hour before FOMC statement. SPY was actually, it had not hit VWAP yet. It was still compressing. This stock was leaking lower, but it's supposed to be a quick scalp, and I wanted to see a quicker move down lower, which I didn't get. So stock ended up having another pushback to VWAP, looking for some liquidity over here, testing this high. And then we actually get the breakdown later once the FOMC conference starts, right? You see some volatility, and then to 40-ish, we start to get that breakdown in the stock on heavy volume. And so there was a chance maybe for another entry. We break through this upward sloping trend line, and that moves a little bit lower. Okay, so that was CWH. Last trade I took was Reddit. Okay, so on a day where everything had gapped down hard, Reddit was one of the few shining beacons of truth. Big gap up, post earn bull. Again, similar pattern to this Spotify, right? Gap up. We got a nice little double bottom here, and it grinds up to a new high of the day. And then the stock is kind of holding this level here for a little while. This stock, right, market is selling off over here later in the day, right? 1235, 1250, kind of selling off and holding, kind of compressing right here. And so Reddit is also compressing near the high of the day. So here's what I see, right? I get my alert triggered. I get this high minus trend line triggered. Now I was like, all right, well, look, if the market can find support, this stock has a chance to rally. I'm not looking for anything crazy, right? Like if it can hit the high of the day, I was honestly like, look, it's kind of a there's some bearish selling price action here. Buyers are making some sort of stand. I think Reddit has a chance for a little scalp. So we got a close here at 195.50, and I got in halfway at 194.80, right? So I got in like, somewhere here at the 110 candle. I got a little bit of a better pullback, and market's compressing, Reddit is compressing, and I'm just watching this pivot low because I want this pivot low to hold. And then when it starts to break over here at 155, that's when I get out of the trade and I exit at 191.80. So, I mean, it was a strong stock, but like looking back on, like, I think the entry wise, like, look, I got a better bid entry, which was good. But in terms of syncing it up, I think the first entry point is breaking through this high of the day here. You have a chance to get in on the trade. And the second one is actually probably waiting for it to pull back to VWAP, right? And then maybe you get something off VWAP here, but I want to make sure it holds. And when it starts to break through over here, right, you can see this selling pressure kind of starting to mount. And then you can get out maybe at a VWAP test. But yeah, so it starts to give back in those gains, and it's going to take a while for it to digest those gains. So, I'm actually going to bracket this in the meantime, but I think it can be poised for a leg up higher if it holds most of these gains. So keep an eye on Reddit. But yeah, I mean, I think it will obviously, look, I got a good pick. I got a better bid, which was good. And I know the market had some selling pressure, but there was some two-sided price action that day. So I had a chance to, I think, there was some couple opportunities if you take any longs, right, get a nice strong stock. But looks like this stock just ran out of gas, didn't have that leg to push up higher and break through this resistance forming at around 196. So yeah, those are all the trades for the week. So thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you all in the next video.